Anyway, today, I do have to say that the Poetry Center and all the activities of the Poetry Center, including the Theater and Poetry Project and all the other things, the art galleries and everything else that we do, are made possible by grants from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, individual donations from people who are supporters of the Poetry Center, and also by the support of the Passaic County Community College, which provides space and lots of other things for us, and particularly by the support of our president, Dr. Steve Rose, who's been very, very much behind everything we do here at the Poetry Center. And we couldn't continue to do what we're doing without somebody like that standing behind us and supporting us financially, and by giving us things like, you don't think of it, but the janitors who clean the rooms and the equipment and all the rest of it that we really couldn't afford to purchase on our own. Anyway, today I'm very happy that we're bringing Jan Beatty, I'm saying it incorrectly, Beatty, is that right? I've been calling her Jan Beatty. She never corrected me before. Today she told me it's geez, now I've forgotten again. Beatty. I think when I fell and hit my head, I knocked out some brain cells. Anyway, I'm glad to welcome Jan back, and her books include The Switching Yard, which just came out, Red Sugar, which was a finalist for the Paterson Prize, Bone Shaker, a finalist for the Milt Kessler Award, and Mad River, Agnes Lynch Starrett Prize, all published by the University of Pittsburgh Press. For the past 20 years, Jan has hosted and produced Prosody, a public radio show featuring national writers on NPR affiliate WESA-FM. Her awards include publication in Best American Poetry 2013, the Pablo, and she has a hysterical poem about Best American Poetry, I have to say. I'm sorry, I'm mean. Don't pay attention to me. The Pablo Neruda Prize for Poetry, 2 PCA fellowships, and the Creative Achievement Award from the Heinz Foundation. She's a professor of English at Carlow University, where she directs a creative writing program, runs the Mad Woman in the Attic writing workshops, and teaches in the MFA program. Jan is an amazing, risk-taking, honest poet whose work will blow you right out of the water. Let's welcome Jan Beatty.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. And I really want to thank my class this morning. We had such a good class, and you guys were very brave. Having just met me, and I don't know, maybe some of each other, but it was a great class. And I want to really thank, in addition, Maria Mazziotti-Gillen for her amazing poetry. Maria keeps writing book after book, but they're amazingly good, and I don't know how you do it, but I'm glad you're doing it. And Maria has the biggest heart of anyone I know, but I think you already know that. Also, thanks to Desai Smita and Susan Amsterdam for all their work. And I'm really happy to read with Robert Sward. It's an honor to be here. So I'm going to read some of those risk-taking poems from Switching Yard. There's a lot of switching in this book, as in switching babies, switching genders, and really switching trains. I was born in this place called Rosalia Foundling Home in the Hill District in Pittsburgh. It's a home for unwed mothers, and I was adopted when I was, I think, a couple months old. I didn't know my real name until I was in my 30s. And this is called Ghost Daddies. When I was a girl, I was a boy, with black boots and holster and a basketball hoop in the backyard. My reach was endless. I was birthed in a meteor shower, and all the stars knew my name. Ever since, I've been on street corners with gym-crack men you wouldn't want to know, making myself a luminary. I had this piece of paper, took years to get it, the story before the story changed. before the government got their hands on it. I've been told. My first father was a millionaire, his name on my birth certificate, voice on the phone, his lame-ass answer. I didn't come inside her. I was the small voice asking, he was the hammer coming down, shattering me into shooting stars. I covered my bedroom ceiling with planets, prayed for a meteor hit to bury the house. My second father was a hockey player who fucked my mother when she was 20. I drove to Boston to meet him, armed with her picture. He didn't remember her. I was a professional athlete, he said. There were a lot of women. His green eyes burned familiar, and I thought he was a good man. Then 2 weeks later, he said, no, he didn't think he could be my father. I decided I've come from a long line of cowards, men who can only stand up if they're fucking, flaccid after that. Sometimes the earth moves in my dreams with lies about my past. I was bent on ruination, drugs for lunch and dinner with some dope in between. My face, the face of no father, unrecognizable, so why not? I was the immaculate cum shot. I was the wildly surviving thing, racing after ghost daddies in dreams. Dear Father, whoever you are, I hope the sex was ravenous with cross-checking, slashing. I hope there were slats of light everywhere to see my star on the other side. So, thanks. So we were talking in class about accessing buried information and or things we don't want to talk about, don't want to think about. And I was trying to write these birth father poems, and it was really hard because I had met him one time, and I did find out that he was the hockey player, that he was my birth father. He played for the Pittsburgh Hornets, the New York Rangers, the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was won 3 Stanley Cups, and he had the most postseason penalties in the NHL. And he liked to fight, and if you knew me, you know, I get into a lot of fights, and I used to get in physical fights, not anymore. But and I started out in phys ed in college, and my parents were like, "What are you doing? You know, you're hitting everything all the time." But then when I found out, it kind of made sense. So I thought I would take a train from Toronto to Jasper across Canada, stop in Winnipeg where he was born, to find him. I thought, not physically, but just to psychically to find him. So I did that. I took the train, and crazy things started happening on the train. And his nickname was Wild Bill because of all the fighting, and I swear that this happened. So I was looking out the window of the train, and I saw this brown house with this white sign on the side that said Wild Bill. And there was this guy on the porch, this young guy without a shirt. He had long hair. He was drying his hair, and he was looking right at the train. And I said, that's him. This is called Visitation at Gogama. No shirt, was drying his long hair with a towel and staring at the train. He looked about 30. I saw my birth father, young and alive. He stepped out of a brown house with a white sign on the side. Wild Bill, his nickname, in big block letters. I saw him the way he was before he made me, beautiful and astonishing in his maleness. I tell you, this is my family tree. No noble phrases, no graveyards on the hill, just visitations. Now pieces of discarded track, explosion of purple wildflowers along the side, solid wall of rock 5 feet from the train, then a river, bridge, floating leaves that look like giant lily pads. Is that possible? We're approaching the town of Gogama, Ontario, small railroad town, erased by the diesel engine. There's a bar called Restaurant Tavern, and a meat market called Meat Market, and a motel called Motel. No other names. In this place of no naming, or maybe first naming, I decide I'll call myself Bastard. It's plain and accurate. you can count on it. We approach a signal. A woman in a black tank top with killer arms slouches in a gray Buick Century at the crossing and a modified gangster lean. I decide I love her. Call her free. There are one more of these kind of poems that I'll read. And I met my birth mother 3 times, and the first time I met her was through Catholic Social Services. And that was many years ago, and I was still wearing dresses back then, so it was a really long time ago. And I had 2 dresses. I had a blue dress and a red dress, and I wore the red dress. And when I got there, she had the blue dress on. It was really strange. It's called My Mother Was a Dress. For years, I was wearing her. She was cotton. Her neck a blue V for her blue vagina that birthed 6 babies. She had a vanilla string around her waist, even though she was hooker red at heart, like me. I wore her for 2 years, along with a sister dress of deep cherry. When I went to meet her the first time at Catholic Social Services, I wore the cherry and she wore the blue vagina. We thought that genetics had made us go to Joseph P. Horne's to buy the V, but decided we both lived near the bloodless department store. After that, I took her off, stopped wearing her, didn't want her touching my body anymore. I prefer to think it's all animal. The way the V opens my neck to predators, the way she scissored her legs open to my father's cock, the way the dress hugs my hips, then falls. Just like she said she hugged me once, before falling away, switching me out for sale. I'm going to read this one for Maria. So I got angry and I wrote this poem, basically. I was angry at poetry, and I thought I would write this, and I'll tell you a story about it after I read it. Dear American poetry, I see you're publishing straight man, white, white, white. How nice. Are you kidding me? Best American poetry, I'm bored to death. Is anyone alive out there? Your sonnet is impotent, and I have a hard-on. Here's your bloody sonnet. Cunt, 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 cunt. The needle dick, the needle dick, the knee. American poetry, tell your mother you'll be home late. If anyone's out there waiting for you to lick them good, it'll be a long night. I was once fucked by an intellectual in iambic pentameter. My hand was better and more responsive. Your friend, Jan Beatty. So after, some of my friends told me not to put this in the book. They said, don't do that. But I wanted to, and my editor said, yeah. And then I found out that I got into Best American Poetry. So I got this email, but it was too late to pull the poem. And I thought, oh. And I got this email from David Lehman, and I thought, oh no, what's he going to say? And I've never gotten an email from David Lehman, who runs the Best American Poetry series. He said, Jan, I read your book and really loved it. And he said, I especially like Dear American Poetry. He said, I laughed out loud. So I thought, he's a good sport. Good sport. But it's funny. My editor, Ed Ochester, always says, you shouldn't be so honest. And then he says, you have this way of getting into trouble, but then you always get out. I said, well, hopefully I always get out. I'm going to read sort of a gender kind of poem, but it's really about getting dressed. I mean, did you ever have those days where you put all these clothes on the bed and you just can't do it? I don't know. Nothing works. It's called Delicious. I'm looking for clothes to put my body in. At the family gathering, my sisters-in-law wear sundresses and strappy sandals, which are lovely, and it's sunny out. But the Kenneth Cole men's shirt I got on sale seems out of place, like the way I need to wear a lot of metal that can double as weapons if needed. And ever since I cut off all my hair years ago to avoid being mistaken for a woman who wants a man in Dockers, I search websites for men's shoes and shirts to fit, stores for men with elegant small feet, who I imagine to be my cosmic brothers. Then one sister-in-law talks about the new baby, So I switch to the men's talk about the new Camaro, and the NFL's jacked up penalties on hitting, but always swing back to the women who have a watery way about them I love, who are talking about the zesty seasoning for the bean salad, which is, in fact, delicious. Outside the Carnegie Library, Oakland. She said he wanted her to bark like a dog. She needed $20 for the shelter, 8 months pregnant. She wouldn't do it. White guy over there, she said. Far as I know, I'm a free woman, she said. People don't have to do things like that no more. I gave her the money, said I was sorry about people like him. When my friends and I met her next week, different spot, same dog story, different white guy, they gave money. Mad at me afterwards. Why didn't you tell us? People shouldn't have to do things like that, I said. Besides, at least she's out there working it. So not to be confusing, but I have another father poem. My adopted father was a steel worker who also got in a lot of fights, and he punched out his foreman at the mill, and that was his last day there. And then he worked for American Tobacco Company after that, and they gave him a company car. I don't know if you remember those in this way, but and they took out the back seat because that's what companies do. It's called company car. To make sure they took out the back seat, left a dirty hole for hauling supplies. My father worked for American Tobacco when smoking was glamorous and profits fatter. We set up little red and white folding chairs in the back hole of the Ford Fairlane sedan, 1960 black with red vinyl interior. Me and my sister, 7 years before Woodstock, we rock and rolled crazy down the street. I was 10 and didn't know the history of the company store. Laughing and falling over, my father's eyes in the rear view, my mother's scowling. I didn't know the shame of it. Our screams of stupid joy reminded them of what we were. Working class, afraid of being seen riding around, afraid my father would lose his job. He couldn't take us to school or church, but he did. He was the builder of our lives, carving a way through the lies around us. Is that why he yelled so much at our silliness? Where did he put his rage as he pulled the black car into the garage and turned the key? I saw him late one night under the side house light. He took it and put it stone by stone in the driveway wall, heaving and radiant. I saw him give rage a body, breathe it alive. I have two more. I'm going to read a love poem. That's for Dawn, and my husband's a guitar player, which will make sense in the poem. It's called Notes on a Nevada Flood. There's a mountain outside my window and a lake full with glacial water, and it's flooding in my heart, chamber by chamber. I'm a woman in the middle of my life running backwards towards the center, the master flood. Piles of sandbags holding back the washing of the gone dreams. So many things miles off. My husband at home with his brilliant sweetness. A mountain outside my window and a dark blue lake full. And close to here, on an old forest road, a woman is walking to get her mail. She will hear today that. And I'm thinking of her flowered dress and mountain boots, her wondrous life on the edges. Who will write her story? Where does her life go? All the lives above, the swirling below. There's a mountain outside my window, but all I want, the flood of heart in a closed room with you, your arm flung sloppily across me, hitting my face, your other hand playing guitar in deep sleep. Oh, wild, dreaming one. If you were here, what would you say? That I'm swirling towards death in my own eddying ideas? No, you would say, go to sleep. Are you okay? The only blessing I need tonight. Good night to everyone alive. Wherever I am, I'm filled with sediment, with tough, dirty Pittsburgh, where the mountains of black rock and half mills are carapaces. Night coming now, and the hills mounding up as we get closer to the continental divide of you and I, of death. No stopping the water, almost pristine in the quiet. I'm going to end with a Jim Morrison poem because I think I should. And has anyone here seen The Doors in person? Yes. No one ever says yes. Yes, all right. Good. Really? You talked to him?
He came off stage and bummed his cigarette.
Really? Where were you?
Felt for him.
Okay. Wow. And where did you see him? Where did you see him?
Well, in 1968, my mother was a nurse and she was on her way to a nursing home in Pontex. She was waiting for a bus. And then Jim Morrison came by and pulled out and he got pumpkin legs on both places and gave my mother a ride. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and she said,
She was in a
you know
nursing
that group, boy? Well, the Windows, I think.
The windows.
Morris Head, I think. So he loves hearing these stories.
Oh, my.
How kind he was. He was buying his family a house. He was in the Air Force, I think, and he was buying his family a house.
Oh, my. Did you write that poem? Are you a writer?
I am a writer.
Did you write that poem?
No.
Oh, you have to. You have to.
Yeah.
Maybe you should come up here and read it right now. Okay. Okay, well, this is, I'm glad you guys saw them. So I saw the Doors in Pittsburgh in 1970, and it was another lifetime. And back then I was drinking and doing a lot of drugs, and which I don't recommend, but so working on this poem, you know, I was trying to recall things, and I was working with my friend Aaron Smith, who's a great writer, and he's actually coming here in April. And he said, "Are you sure you were even there?" And I said, "Yes, I was there." But then I went home and checked just to make sure that the Doors were in Pittsburgh in 1970 in the Civic Arena, and they were. So this was the time when Morrison was getting arrested and getting dragged off stage for profanity, for pissing on the audience, etc. It's called Drinking the Lizard King. God of the soft parade, Mojo King, and poet of Venice. And second song, he started, wishful, sinful, our love is beautiful. Stripped his shirt down to muscled shoulders, threw it in the audience to bloody screaming, slid into a sideways Lizard King walk, unbuckled his belt, whiplashing his leg with it. We all wanted to die inside that slap, down to the neon. And we knew there were two kinds of people in the world, people who loved Jim Morrison for pissing on the audience, and Republicans. He copped a stance, waving his cock like it was the way, the truth, and the life, and it was, just to be covered in him. We opened our mouths, and when the cops rushed, The Pittsburgh stage, he dropped to his knees, his neon green jockstrap glowing. He grabbed his cock out and swung it like a fire hose as they dragged him off, and we were baptized in the water of the Lizard King. We were stoned, immaculate. To be pissed on by the god Morrison was like being fucked in a muscle car, all cylinders firing full out and nothing in the way. Thank you.